Right. Right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's interactive discussion on how to think rationally. So, as you all know, this was an agenda item from our previous meetup, which we could not make because we were getting to know each other in previous meeting, which was wonderful. And then so we are having this informal interactive discussion here for that. So and so let's. So here's the thing. I think we might have heard about we heard a lot of people talk about this topic in India and outside, and also this is a very common topic in any of the rationalist associations training meetings, which are very regularly conducted in Telugu states as well. Now, what we want to do here differently is that we want to have an interactive want to have a discussion here, interactive discussion, rather than someone talking at length about it and other asking questions. So that this quorum will have the opportunity of talking in that fashion, openly and closely, with one another, and closely as in in a very interpersonal setting, and then so we can build our discussion and all our understanding of rational thinking around what we want to understand about it. So what I'll do is that I'll just open up for questions first. So what do you I think you can point out any specific thing that you would want everyone to discuss about, or you might want to point out some issue that you faced in that sense, in having a lapse in how to think in a specific situation, because we all know what rational thinking is, in a sense that we all know what it constitutes of, what are the steps involved, but we don't know how really it is to, how we can apply it in a specific situation. So I think this is the kind of approach that we can take today, and then we can start with the questions first on specific to this topic. So what I'll do is I'll just share my screen. Oops. Okay. So all right, I'm just sharing a notepad here, which I'm going to edit with some details. So yeah. So first, let's look at the questions, and so where the quorum itself can set the agenda. So all right, who wants to go first? So you can just, I think, give us a question, or you can give us a topic as well in that sense. I mean, a specific subtopic that is related to this.
Yeah, and Satyakar, I do write so many questions, Andy. If you want, I can list out and everything. But if somebody want to go ahead first, that would be great, Andy. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna suggest to Sharad to start with the first question, so that probably you can also set the tone. Yeah, that's okay.
So, sorry, Harish garu. So were you giving a question there?
No, I was saying I would request you to start with the first question, so that probably can also help set the tone, if that is okay.
Oh, sure, definitely. So yeah, maybe I'll say all right, I'll talk about sunk cost fallacy. I mean, this is some random thing that I'm going to start. That's something that
I
we can
have
talk
something,
about.
Andy, if you don't.
Yeah,
mind.
sure, Andy. Go ahead.
Yeah. So one thing that I've been observing after coming to US is there is a lot of diversity, Andy, which is a good thing in so many places. But when it comes to misinformation, I could still see people moving from they're jumping ships. I've seen people go from fully fledged into temples, into some of the groups pyramids, some groups spirituality, some groups which are those manifestation So there is like a lot of diversity, and as rationalists, we know and we understand that hey, this is spoof, or this is really baseless in any of these theories, right? But then like if like I've seen a person like a personal friend of mine or someone, like he was jumping ships from one ship to the other, like religion first, spirituality next. Like he's always searching for something, but not we are not in that quest. We already came to a conclusion by ourselves, like we had so many tools, and like is there a general framework that will address like multiple of these together, like under one umbrella? Like hey, I go to this person, tell him like spirituality is not so whatever Sadhguru is saying is trash, or like they don't have any basis in this. The next day they go to some pyramid organization that I say pyramid is trash. The next day they go to some spiritual like healing therapy or something, like all of the weird things. Like there are cults that are like tapping them. There is some cult that I heard of, like Namyo Horengekyo or something, and then like the Scientology. Like there are so many things available, like for them to like grab their attention and make them their customers into like I recently went to like one of Baha'i faith. I'm not sure like if you know any of those. Like Chicago has a beautiful temple. Like the architecture is like superb, but then the faith is like completely baseless. Like like I see people going there. Like there are like so many avenues if you want to like dip your toes into like conspiracy theories. I was watching some series like manifestation, like some other person I know, he believes that if you manifest your dreams into the world and then it will happen for you. There are signs from nature that will tell you like this is the right stock to buy or this is the right thing to do. I mean, these are all pretty baseless. Like is there a general framework using which we can address like this problem that we see, or educate our friends and family regarding things like that?
Sure, Andy. I think that's a great start. I think so. I think I've jotted on one question as finding answers for these mysterious questions, because that seems to be the reason why these people join all
Exactly.
these organizations. They keep jumping from one company to another company.
Exactly.
So yeah, and I think the other thing is I think visualization is the other one, where there was a specific thing, where you imagine something that's happening, that's going to happen, and that universe will conspire to make that happen for you. That's specifically what visualization is in these practices. And the other one is about I think you raised the question of finding satisfaction. You can say something like yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like there are so many avenues open. Like these are some things that I came across, but there may be so many that I don't even know of, right? So, like these are all like I see different stages of becoming a cult or religion. Like that's their agenda. But then, like I've seen someone in India like going through like some like truth or Ramta or something, like Viveka, truth Viveka or something. Like I came across like so many people, but I wanted to like try to generalize and see like what these people are searching for. Maybe Sarathkar, your question puts that into right perspective. Like what are they searching for? Like what are they looking for? Why are they jumping ship? Why are they not like us? Like you give me any bogus idea, like I have a framework that I use. Like hey, what he's telling doesn't have any proof in like doesn't have any rational behind it, so it's no use to like follow or like get into that cult for whatever reason it might be. But these people, they just keep finding a new reason to jump into new cult. But when will they stop, or like how to educate them? Like I can tell him like the region, the thing that you're following today is BS, but then the next day he'll think something else is also like that we haven't particularly talked about. Like if I say someone that pyramids are they don't have any base in any theory or something, and then the next day he jumps to like the crystals or healing crystals. Like I have to start anew for them, or else like, is there a base framework like, hey, use this kind of thinking to understand if this is like, worthy or not? Or...
Yeah. Sure. Which is like a general framework in which we can answer these questions. Right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
I'd like to raise one point for discussion as well.
Sure, Harishkar.
So basically, coming to rationality or upholding humanistic values in general.
Harish, your voice is breaking. Is it only for me or?
No, I think his voice is breaking.
Yeah,
okay.
his voice is
okay. Let me see if this is better. Is this better?
Yeah, it's better indeed.
Is it better now? Or?
Yeah. Yes, Harishkar, it's better now. Yep.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Yeah. So basically, besides these things about beliefs and practices, we see wading into so many newer territories now in terms of discussions or in terms of upholding humanist values. For example, things about LGBT rights, climate change, then curriculum redesign and thinking. So we wade into a lot of new topics where it is also very important to be rational to find basically what is right? And also there are a lot of ethical and moral dilemmas. So I just want to raise this topic about what is the role of knowledge and data in thinking rationally, right? Is logic alone sufficient? And where do we begin to identify the need for knowledge and data? And basically, how do we expand the concepts of rational thinking into aspects that are beyond just God, religion, and cultural practices, right? So this is something I'd like to see if we can discuss as well.
Oh yes, I think this is pretty important topic too.
Yeah. So something else I just want to mention is about the logistics. So I also see the screen flickering. Is it for me?
Yeah, I think it's problem with Telegram. Let me just try sharing my entire screen instead of this.
Okay.
Okay. Just give me a second. I think now it's better.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So app specific screen sharing is done really bad. Yeah. If you share the entire screen, it's good.
And good that it's not lights, or else we would have like
All right. And all right. So we do have like two things to start with, and Ram Garu or Godavari Garu or Sai Vas Garu. Do you want to add anything? Add something here?
యా అండి బిలీఫ్ సిస్టమ్ ఐ మీన్ ఫస్ట్ చిన్నప్పటి నుంచి పుట్టినప్పటి నుంచి బిలీఫ్ సిస్టంలో పెరిగిన తర్వాత నుంచి వాళ్ళ బ్రెయిన్ అలా వాష్ అవుట్ అయిందని నా అభిప్రాయం అండి. సడన్ గా మనం ఏంటంటే వాళ్ళ బిలీఫ్ సిస్టమ్ ని మనము కౌంటర్ చేస్తున్నప్పుడు వాళ్ళ ఐడెంటిటీ క్రైసిస్ లో పడుతున్నారండి. అంటే నేను నమ్మింది ఇప్పటిదాకా అది ఫాల్స్ అని ఒప్పుకోవడానికే ముందర వాళ్ళు రెడీగా లేరు అనమాట, యాక్సెప్ట్ చేయడానికి రెడీగా లేరు నా అబ్జర్వేషన్ లో. అంటే నేను రాంగా, అంటే తన ఇప్పుడు నువ్వు అన్ని ఎవరిని డిఫైన్ చేస్తామండి? వాళ్ళ బిలీఫ్ బేసిస్ మీద కదా డిఫైన్ చేసేది ఎవరినైనా. ఎప్పుడైనా వాళ్ళ బిలీఫ్ సిస్టమ్ ని మనం క్వశ్చన్ చేసినప్పుడు వాళ్ళ ఐడెంటిటీ క్రైసిస్ లో డిఫెండ్ అవుతున్నారు బేసికల్ గా నా అబ్జర్వేషన్ లో. అది నేను ఒకటి ఫైండ్ అవుట్ చేశానండి. ఇలా ఇంకా సెకండ్ థింగ్ ఏంటంటే, ఒకసారి సైన్స్ ఇవ్వని కంఫర్ట్ ఏదో రిలీజియన్ ఇస్తుందని నా అభిప్రాయం అండి. అది దట్ వే దే ఆర్ గెటింగ్ ఇన్ టు దిస్ రిలీజియన్ ట్రాప్. అది ఏమిస్తుంది అంటే సమ్ సపోజ్ లైఫ్ లో ఒక లైఫ్ డిఫైన్ చేయమన్నాం అనుకోండి, అది సైన్స్ లో అంటే లైవ్లీనెస్ డిఫైన్ చేసుకుని లైఫ్ అంటే ఏం కంఫర్ట్ ఇస్తుంది, లైఫ్ అంటే అర్థం ఏంటి, అటువంటి మెటాఫిజిక్స్ టర్మ్స్ అన్ని వాళ్ళకి రిలీజియన్ లో దొరుకుతున్నాయి అని నా అభిప్రాయం అండి. అదొకటి నేను అబ్జర్వ్ చేసిన ఫ్యాక్ట్. యా అండి. ఐ విల్ యాడ్ మోర్ అండి. క్వశ్చన్స్ అయితే చాలా ఉన్నాయి, బట్ ఐ డోంట్ నో whether I will talk to you if I get the time and remaining questions. Let us include our group members' questions and questions.
So everyone, I want to also add one thing here. See, as a person spoke, specially said that religion is like opium. So people are very comfortable in consuming that. So, but if we explain like a certain personalities who are like inspirations in the society, who does think rationally and act rationally, then we will try to, at least people try to follow them, because ఓపెన్ గా చెప్తున్నానండి, మెజారిటీ ఆఫ్ ద వరల్డ్ విల్ బి ఫాలోవర్స్ ఎట్ ఎనీ పాయింట్ ఆఫ్ టైం. ఫ్యూచర్ లో కానీ ప్రజెంట్ పాస్ట్ మెజారిటీ ఆఫ్ పీపుల్ ఫాలోవర్సే ఉంటారు. సో రాదర్ దాన్ ఫాలోయింగ్ ద రిలీజియస్ కల్ట్ పర్సన్, వై డోంట్ మీరు మీకుండే నాలెడ్జ్ ఎక్స్పీరియన్స్ లో రేషనల్ పీపుల్, స్టార్టింగ్ ఫ్రమ్ సోక్రటిస్ నుంచి ఇప్పుడు ఉన్న పర్సన్స్ వరకు, వాళ్ళ ఇన్స్పైరింగ్ లైఫ్ స్టోరీస్ ని కొంచెం సమాజానికి చెప్పగలిగితే, then that is will be more beneficial. At least we will follow them అని నేను అనుకుంటా ఉన్నాను. ఇంకొకటి అండి, ఇప్పుడు సొసైటీలో ఈ డార్క్ క్రష్ టువర్డ్స్ దిస్ డార్క్ ఆర్ విలన్ పర్సనాలిటీస్, అది కొంచెం ఎక్కువ అయిపోయింది అనుకుంటున్నాను. ఈవెన్ మెన్ అండ్ ఉమెన్, ఐ డోంట్ నో ఫాలోయింగ్ దెమ్ ఫర్ స్పెషల్లీ దిస్ కల్ట్ మ్యాచోయిజం కైండ్ ఆఫ్ థింగ్స్. సో దాని నుంచి మన యూత్ ని డైవర్ట్ చేసి రియల్ పీపుల్ ని, ఐ మీన్ హూ హ్యాస్ టు బి ఫాలోడ్, వాళ్ళని వాళ్ళ ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్, వాళ్ళ లైఫ్ స్టోరీస్ ని చెప్పగలిగితే దట్ విల్ బి గుడ్ థింగ్ అని నేను అనుకుంటాను.
So this is like two things, right? Where making use of pop culture, making use of culture, art and culture, and pop
Right.
culture, popular culture, to inspire others to be rational. Yeah,
Right,
that's an important point, Andy. Actually, that's
Exactly.
a very big challenge. Actually, I think most of the rationalist movement, activism, everything that
Exactly.
happens, that is
Exactly.
built around to achieve something like this. Yeah, definitely.
ఎందుకంటే బయట ప్రపంచంలో అదర్స్ కాకుండా మన తెలుగు వాళ్ళు, తిరుపతినేని రామస్వామి గారు కానివ్వండి, చాలా మంది గారికి ఈ వేమన గురించి చాలా మందికి తెలియదు. చిన్నప్పుడు వేమన పద్యాలు లేదు అనుకుంటాం, కానీ ఆయన అప్పట్లోనే ఎంతో రేషనలిజం ని సొసైటీకి చెప్పారు. ఆయన గురించి కొంచెం 10% తెలుసుకున్నా కూడా ఇంకా చాలండి. చాలా మందికి తెలియకనే ఇటువైపు వెళ్తున్నారు అనుకుంటా ఉన్నా.
I think yeah, this is, you can call it culture of science.
Yes,
Right?
exactly, sir.
Definitely. Oh, I think we have we have very good agenda items here. Yeah, Godargar, but
See, here, I mean, first somebody already touched upon that point. So, question is, whom should we educate? Whom? Who is I mean, anybody, or a neighbor, a set of people, or whom should we educate? Why I'm asking this question? If they are not interested, there is no point of giving any lecture, because they blindly say that no, it's not worth it, or I don't believe it, I don't like it. So in this context, if you are keep telling, your time and your efforts would be wasted. How to, I mean, whom to educate and how to target them, or how to do that, that is very important. That strategy is important. So when you come up with a good content, a good material, or something you want to give it to society, but how to deliver, whom to deliver is matter. లేకపోతే బూడిదలో పోసిన పన్నీర్ లాగా వస్తుంది. దట్ ఈస్ వన్ క్వశ్చన్. అండ్ సెకండ్ థింగ్ ఈజ్ ఈ I mean, very generic. So you might see that a lot of the time we are giving examples in Hindu religion, or maybe we are all from Hindu families. Might be you have good idea about good and bad or worse things. So might be we are pointing out. But these things leads like okay, he belongs to some other religion, something like that. So we need not to prove them that I am not belongs to other religion. However, we have to come up with a kind of generic kind of criticism, or generic kind of bursting the superstitious beliefs, with cover all kind of scenarios as much as we can. Otherwise, pointing out one person or one religion or one set of people is maybe our mind also keep thinking in one way. We should also understand some other things and come up with that. Otherwise, even though you're thinking rational, still 1% only you're thinking. That is my thing. And second thing is, here very important point I want to touch upon. So when you are giving some detail, some information, very generic question, why should they believe us? How do you say that whatever approach is coming, that is kind of proven or really matters in next 30 years, 300 years? So some sort of proofs or some sort of evidence. That evidence resembles that not Godavari or Sharath or Harish is speaking. It is something happened or this is already proven. That kind of resemblance should be given in the any lecture or any kind of discussion. I would feel that. Then, this is how rational people think, that it's not like individual people criticizing. It's a kind of generic idea. So it holds good anywhere, every time. So this kind of approach is better, I would say. So we need to think that how to go in that way.
Sure, Gadagara. I think what you mentioned, what I think you raised like 2 points there, which is one, that we should not be focusing too much on one religion, in the sense that we should be criticizing everyone. We should be hitting everyone in the same way. That's one thing, and the other thing is who is the audience for rational thinking, for what we do or what we say. It's not just we, but in general, who is the audience? Who need to listen to rational thinking? And I think. This comes, I think the utility of rational thinking is also can be discussed along with this, because I think it's close, right? I mean, whoever gets utility, they should be the audience, right? So yeah.
Here two things, sir. Thing is like, if somebody is personally he's showing interest, okay, current believing system or current whatever following blindly, that not work it out, I want to understand what is behind. Those guys are there. So those guys really understanding and trying to find out rational way and trying to find out what is behind that. But there are some people, they never listen. However, human tendency is that if you give a good content without knowing us, they will come to the particular forum or particular channels, and they will get to know. Otherwise, they will also, in that perspective, that's what I'm telling, that we should go in a general approach, kind of. So then anybody can come and they will only get their own answers. Okay, we'll discuss that. Even last call also, I raised the question. We will discuss later.
Yeah, definitely. So,
okay.
Yeah, Vasgaru, go ahead.
ఇది త్రీ పీపుల్ గా కేటగిరైజ్ చేయొచ్చండి. ఒకళ్ళు ఓపెన్ మైండ్ అండి, ఒకళ్ళు డౌట్ఫుల్ అండి, దే డోంట్ నో అండ్ బట్ దే వాంట్ టు లెర్న్. థర్డ్ వన్ ఏంటంటే ఇట్స్ నాట్ ఓపెన్ మైండెడ్, దే డోంట్ అలౌ us టు గెట్ ఇన్ టు దమ్ అండ్ టీచ్ దమ్. ది త్రీ పీపుల్ గా కేటగిరైజ్ చేయొచ్చండి. ఓపెన్ మైండ్ పీపుల్ కి ఆల్రెడీ ఇట్స్ ఈజీ అండి మెసేజ్ పాస్ చేయటము. డూబియస్ అంటే డౌట్ఫుల్ ఉన్న పీపుల్కి ఏమో మనము గివింగ్ థాట్ఫుల్ క్వశ్చన్స్ కనుక పాయింట్ అవుట్ చేస్తే దే ఆర్ ఓకే అండి. ఐ మీన్ దే అట్లీస్ట్ థింక్ అబౌట్ దాట్ అండ్ దెన్ దే విల్ గెట్ బ్యాక్ టు అస్. మన థర్డ్ కేటగిరీ ఉన్న పీపుల్తోనే మోస్ట్ ఆఫ్ ద ఇష్యూస్ అండి. దే డోంట్ అలౌ us టు, ఐ మీన్ ఇఫ్ మనం ఎప్పుడైనా క్వశ్చన్ చేస్తున్నా కానీ థాట్ఫుల్ క్వశ్చన్స్ కూడా ఉన్నా కూడా వాళ్ళు దే సే నో అండి. అది నేను అబ్జర్వ్ చేసింది. అది రీసెంట్ గా నేను చేసిన ఎక్స్పెరిమెంటల్ అండి, నా ఓన్ కాలేజ్ ఫ్రెండ్స్ తో చేసిన ఎక్స్పెరిమెంట్ అండి అది. సో ఇలా కేటగిరైజ్ చేశారండి. త్రీ టైప్ ఆఫ్ కేటగిరైజ్ పీపుల్.
అవునండి, I think that's true. I think we can even generalize it more, I think, when we discuss this. So we also have Chandra garu and Ram garu. So Chandra and Ram, so do you want to add something to the agenda as well, looking at these points? Do you see something that you want to add as well?
హే హాయ్, యాక్చువల్లీ నేను ఈ రోజే జాయిన్ అయ్యాను, లాస్ట్ మీటింగ్ మిస్ అయ్యి ఉండే. ఐఎమ్ అవుట్ సైడ్ బట్ జస్ట్ జాయిన్ అవుదాం జాయిన్ అయ్యాను.
ఓ షూర్ అండి.
ఇంకేం ఎక్స్పెక్ట్ చేస్తున్నారండి, అందరూ జాయిన్ అవుదాం.
లేదు అంటే నేను అవుట్ సైడ్ బయట ఉన్నా షాప్.
జాయిన్ అవ్వండి.
Definitely అండి. I think you can just I think you can follow the discussion and మీకు ఏమైనా మధ్యలో అనిపిస్తే you can just ask questions. Definitely.
Sure.
All right, and Chandra garu, do you want to add something to the agenda before we? I mean, we kind of started already, but yeah, before we even go further.
No, thanks అండి. జస్ట్ డిస్కషన్ ఎట్లా ఉందో ఏంటి అని చెప్పి వినడానికి జాయిన్ అయ్యాను. ఇట్స్ గుడ్ టు లిసన్ టు ఆల్ ఆఫ్ యూ. యా, థాంక్యూ.
Oh yeah, great, Andy. Okay, I think we can.
మీ సారీ,
చెప్పండి.
మీ పేరేంటి? యాక్చువల్లీ ఈ వాయిస్ నేను చాలా అంటే హ్యూమనిస్ట్ ఛానల్లో వింటూ ఉంటాను.
ఓ యా, నా పేరు శరత్. ఐఎమ్ శరత్.
ఓకే, గుడ్ టు అండి, మిమ్మల్ని చూడడం చాలా హ్యాపీ ఉంది. గుడ్.
యా, నైస్ టు మీట్ యు టు అండి.
థాంక్యూ.
Alright, so let's get started అండి. అయితే
ప్లీజ్ క్యారీ ఆన్, ఐల్ కీప్ లిసనింగ్.
Sure అండి, Chandra garu. So I think we can start with first point there. So what we'll do is, I think I'll just say a couple of sentences here, and then I'll ask Harish garu to expand on it, and then we can open it up, and then we can just go agenda item by agenda, and that's something that we can do now. So the first point is, which Harish garu raised, is about the first thing. It is about, not just the religious aspects of not just the religious topics in which we typically use rational thinking to debunk or to educate people, but topics other than religion. There are a lot of things other than religion, and that is indeed true. So the first point is that the scope of rationality is way beyond what religion offers. Religion is just a it's just a low hanging fruit. I mean, it's religion jujubi in the whole scheme of rational thinking. So I think, as you said, there are tons of other topics where we should be using rational thinking, and many people don't use rational thinking. Even religious people and non-religious people, in that sense, they don't use critical thinking or rational thinking. I think it applies to everything, right? I mean, rational thinking is largely about making the best possible decisions that align with your expectations given the uncertainty, right? Things are always uncertain. So under these listed uncertainties, what is the decision, or what is the framework in which we can use to think, to make a decision that aligns with what we want to do? So that's the essence of rational thinking. And when we employ the same thing in science, science is because it's about finding the best possible explanation that matches close with reality on why something is happening, right? So that is the kind of, we want to develop a model, or we want to develop a theory, or we want to make decisions that align close to find that. So that's the goal there. So broadly speaking, rational thinking is about that. So the most important thing here is the uncertainty in rational thinking, because it's always uncertain. See, if we do know things for certainty, which we do know many things about with lot of certainty. I mean, of course, there is nothing like 100% certainty in a technical sense, but I mean, we do know a lot of things. For example, we do know that people don't walk on water, or we know that water doesn't turn into wine, just like that. I mean, without employing a lot of chemistry there. So it's like that. I mean, you can't create gold out of lead because we know how atoms are formed, because we know the scientific background of that. So there are many things that we do know, and there are many things we don't know as well, and many things that are current topics. So current affair topics, like what do we need to do for climate change, to fight climate change? What is possible, and what should we do? Or what is the best way to improve healthcare access in a country, or what is the best way to alleviate poverty in a country? So these are some questions that have a lot of uncertainties, and on which there is data, a lot of data, but there is also a lot of data not available, which we would like to have. So under these circumstances, the power of rationality is what that actually blooms. So rationality is the only candidate that we can use to make any kind of decision. That's the first point that I want to make. Of course, religion is a huge problem, at least in Indian society, because of superstitious thinking and the harm it causes to people. But there are many aspects, of rational thinking that religion is simply not part of, like many things. And the other part is about logic versus data. Definitely, this is a really important topic. And I don't know if you read philosophy, like if you read philosophy in the 18th century or 19th century onwards, at least in the last 300 years, you would see that there is this fight between people who would rely on logic versus people who rely on data. This is the rationalism versus empiricism debate. Now, today that's not really relevant, because that was a contention among two schools of philosophers 150 years ago, but not now anymore. So today, rationality is about using logic. It's also about empirical analysis. So it's the mix of these two. That's what rationality is. So 150 years ago, 200 years ago, the scientific method was a bit different from what the scientific method is now. So today, it's heavily relied upon data. It's heavily relied upon empirical analysis of things, which ties back to the whole matter of uncertainty. So because 150 years before, people assumed that the highest intellectuals of those times, they assumed that things can be understood in a very, what do you say, it's not really deterministic fashion, but they thought that there is certainty in everything, and they wanted to find universal set of principles that can guide everything. Now what we know is whatever rational thinking or whatever scientific models that we can come about, they are actually confined to domain, and they do really explain things very well within that domain. And within that domain, that's where the power of rational models are, and scientific models are. So there is a bit nuance to it, but the point is that I think both logic and data are really important, and many times it's by empirical analysis that we actually construct logic to think about certain things. So in many matters, just because we assume certain things doesn't mean that reality will reflect in that way. One example is COVID lockdown. At least people in India thought, you would impose rules and then that's how people are going to behave. That's not how people are going to behave. You have to understand, you need to have an empirical understanding of how people behave in large numbers, and that's how you have to, understand the logic in which people behave. So that's one example of where logic might, the common sense logic might actually go against data, and where we have to use data to actually construct the logic in understanding the whole thing. So I think those 2 points I'll end here, and I'll give over to Harish. So do you want to add something?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sharad. Can you hear me well now?
Yes, Andy, it's very clear now.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I think brilliantly put. I think you made quite a strong and clear opening on this topic, and very appreciated. So yeah, just regarding the kind of regions that the topic wades into, and how and why it is important to also exercise critical thinking and rationalism in these debates. I just want to highlight two particular domains or topics. Okay, first I want to mention is about LGBT rights, because that is sort of a very imminent topic we're seeing, especially in the Western world, right? So, for example, we see the acceptance of transgender sportspersons in sports. That has got, that has got a lot of overlap with actually being able to understand what is equal opportunity for also women in sports, right? So it is not a black and white question about just
it's not about men versus women anymore. Yeah,
exactly, right. Then similarly, if we wade a bit further in that topic, now there is this large debate about access to toilets for toilet or changing spaces for transgender people. Here again, there are implications of crime, safety, and also just the feeling of security for one or the other gender, right? So it is not a black and white. It's not a black and white decision on speaking anymore. You choose one side, you will see there are many people affected. You choose other side, there can be many people affected too. And here, a lot of this debate is driven, at least in popular media, by people quoting certain kinds of data, right? So here in this sort of environments, I think knowledge is definitely power. Otherwise, no matter which side you're supporting, or whichever side you think is right, it is not easy to put forward your case without a strong understanding of science and data, both these things, right? Then the second domain I want to highlight is something that most of us in the group are pretty interested about, which is again in religion. Lot of, as you said, religion debate is sort of a jujube now, because if you see even people like Jordan Peterson, they're actually propounding more of utilitarianism of religion. They're saying, okay, a lot of the Western society built on Judeo-Christian values actually is beneficial to the people. And then that same set of values goes on to abuse women's rights and so on, right? If you're aware of this popular debate. So here too, it is not just what logic dictates, but there is a lot on when you're trying to adjudge utilitarianism, you need to think a lot more than just what logic dictates. And there again, strong data and knowledge are important. So these are the two domains I wanted to just highlight where we may need to just go beyond just logic and actually resort to gaining as much knowledge, information, and data as possible. And then just taking forward this point one more step, I very much take your point on the on this rationalism versus empiricism that you brought up, right? Even for simple questions like does God exist? At some level, we are using empiricism. The fact that we cannot see God, or the fact that we cannot see supernatural phenomena, actually is a way of applying empirical evidence to support some part of your logic, right? Without any empirical evidence, you cannot build logic on top. I mean, yeah, there are definitely ways. I won't just strongly say, okay, there is no way to arrive at any conclusion without empiricism, but empiricism definitely is a very crucial part of it. So I think the same part of empirical evidence also flows into making rational decisions, rational arguments, and exercising critical thought in other domains of debate as well. Yeah, so I stop there. Yeah.
Definitely, I think empirical analysis, it's like a filtering condition. So you have all these models or all these intellectual frameworks, and then based on empirical analysis, you can actually eliminate many of them. So empirical analysis data tells you which direction is at least a worthwhile, and which are not good directions. So I think that's
yeah. Thank you.
So, and Vasgaru or anyone, would you like to add something here before we move to the next agenda item?
Yeah, Andy, I do make a few notes, Andy, actually how to think rationally. I briefly, and I don't want to go every detail, Andy, but I will go briefly. Even మనం రిలీజియస్ పక్కన పెట్టి we want to think అండి how to think rationally అన్నారు కూడా. అక్కడ 2 ఫ్యాక్టర్స్ నాకున్న రీసెర్చ్ లో రీసెంట్ లాస్ట్ ఒక కపుల్ ఆఫ్ మంత్స్ నుంచి రీసెర్చ్ చేస్తే నాకు దొరికినాయి ఏంటంటే 2 థింగ్స్ అండి. కాగ్నిటివ్ బయాస్ అను ఏది ఈవెన్ మనం ఒక రేషనల్ గా థింక్ చేద్దాము అని అనుకున్నా కూడా 2 ఫ్యాక్టర్స్ అండి. వన్ ఈజ్ కాగ్నిటివ్ బయాస్ ఒకటి, లాజికల్ ఫాల్సీస్ అని 2 ఉన్నాయండి. కాగ్నిటివ్ బయాస్ లో మనకి చాలా ఉన్నాయండి, 23, 25 దాకా ఉన్నాయి. మన హ్యూమనిస్ట్ గారు ఎవరు పాయింట్ చేశారండి, పేరు మర్చిపోయాను. బట్ యా, ఈ బయాస్ ని ప్రాక్టికాలిటీలో మనం ఇంప్లిమెంట్ చేసేటప్పుడు మన ఇండివిజువల్ ఐక్యూ పవర్ని బట్టి ఉంటుందని నా అభిప్రాయం అండి. బాగా స్మార్ట్, కొద్ది సైన్స్, మొత్తం సైన్స్ తెలిసి ఉండాలి ఇవన్నీ అప్లై చేయాలంటే, లాజిక్ తెలిసి ఉండాలి. ఇవన్నీ ప్రాక్టీస్ లోకి వచ్చే తల్లికి మనకి రిలీజన్ పక్కన పెట్టి ఓన్లీ ఈ బయాస్ ను, ఇది ఎవరైనా స్టేట్మెంట్ చేశారనుకోండి, గాడ్ ఉన్నారా లేదా, అసలు గాడ్ కి ఎంపిరికల్ ఎవిడెన్స్ ఏంటి, ఇటువంటివన్నీ థింక్ చేయాలన్నా కూడా, వాళ్ళతో ఆర్గ్యుమెంట్ చేయాలన్నా కూడా మనకి చాలా మట్టికి లాజిక్ అనేది చాలా అవసరం అవుతుందండి. నాకు అది అర్థమైంది. అది లాజికల్ ఫాల్సీస్ లో కూడా లాజిక్ అప్లై చేయాలన్నా దాంట్లో కూడా మనకున్న డేటా సరిపోదు కదండి. అంటే నాకున్న ఎంత డేటా ఉన్నా కూడా అది సరిపోవట్లేదు వాళ్ళకి ఆర్గ్యుమెంట్ చేయడానికి. గాడ్ లేరు అంటే గాడ్ ఇప్పుడు ఒక క్వశ్చన్ వచ్చిందండి, గాడ్ ఉన్నారా లేరా అన్న క్వశ్చన్, దానికి నువ్వు గాడ్ లేరని కూడా ప్రూవ్ చేయలేదు కదా అని అడుగుతున్నారండి. సో వాట్ ఐ కెన్ సే అండి, ఆ తర్వాత నీకు తెలియదు కదా అది గాడ్ లేరన్న దానికి ఇంకా కొన్ని క్వశ్చన్స్ అయితే ఎలా వచ్చినాయి అంటే అండి, ఓకే ఇది ఒకవేళ మనకి ఆఫ్టర్ డెత్ తర్వాత పరిస్థితి ఏంటి, సైన్స్ లో ఎటువంటి ఆన్సర్స్ లేవండి. కొన్నిటికి సైన్స్ లో ఆన్సర్ లేవు, కొన్ని ఆన్సర్స్ ఫిలాసఫీలో ఉన్నాయి. నాకు అర్థమైంది ఏంటంటే, మేబీ యూ కెన్ కరెక్ట్ మీ అండి. అందుకని మోస్ట్ ఆఫ్ దమ్ ఏంటంటే రిలీజియన్ మోస్ట్ కొద్ది ఫిలాసఫీ ఉంటుంది అండి. ఓకే, లైఫ్ తర్వాత నువ్వు నరకానికి వెళ్తావు లేదా స్వర్గానికి వెళ్తావు, ఏదో ఒక సంథింగ్ కంఫర్ట్ ఇస్తుంది. దట్స్ వై దే వాంట్ టు స్విచ్ ఇన్ టు రిలీజియన్. అంటే వాళ్ళకి ఇవన్నీ క్వశ్చన్ మార్క్స్ కదండి. ఐ మీన్ ఏమవుతుంది తర్వాత ఏమవుతుంది అంటే సైన్స్ ఇవ్వలేకపోతుంది. సో రిలీజియన్ లో ఆ కంఫర్ట్ దొరుకుతుంది. దట్స్ వై దే వాంట్ టు స్టిక్ టు ఇట్ అన్నమాట. ఇంకా లాజికల్ ఫాల్సీస్ వస్తే ఒక్కసారి అండి, యా ఒక్క నిమిషము. అండ్ ఆర్గ్యుమెంట్ ని మనము క్వశ్చన్ చేసేటప్పుడు కూడా దాంట్లో ఫండాస్ ఎత్తుక్కోవాలి ముందర. డైరెక్ట్ గా నాకెంత సైన్స్ తెలిసినను దాంట్లో ఫండాస్ తెలియకుండా క్వశ్చన్ చేసినప్పుడు వాళ్ళు రివర్స్ క్వశ్చన్ చేసినప్పుడు మనం ఒక టైం టేకింగ్ పడుతుంది అనమాట. అదొకటి నేను ఫేస్ చేశానండి. అంటే ఫండాస్ మొత్తం తెలియాలని లేదు కదండి. అందుకని ఇప్పుడు సపోజ్ బ్లాక్ వాళ్ళకి తెలుగులో కృష్ణ బిలాలు అంటారు, బ్లాక్ హోల్స్ అంటారండి. బ్లాక్ హోల్స్ నీకు తెలియదు కదా, అది ఏం జరుగుతుంది, అది మిస్టీరియస్ కదా, అది కృష్ణుడి సృష్టి కదా, అది సంథింగ్ ఏదో దే విల్ కమ్ విత్ సంథింగ్ నాన్ సెన్స్ అండి. సో కొన్ని నా బేసిక్ అంటే నేను ఫైనల్ ఇచ్చేస్తానండి. కొన్ని సైన్స్ లో ఇవ్వని సమ్ కంఫర్ట్ అనేది రిలీజియన్ లో ఏదో ఇస్తుందండి, సంథింగ్. దట్స్ వై దే వాంట్ స్టిక్ టు ద రిలీజియన్, దే డోంట్ వాంట్ గెట్ ఇట్ అవుట్. సిన్స్ దే బార్న్ రిలీజన్ బేస్డ్ బార్న్ పుట్టడం వల్ల వాళ్ళ బ్రెయిన్ వాష్ అయి ఉండడం వల్ల వాళ్ళ న్యూరల్ నెట్వర్క్ అనంతా అలా స్ట్రక్చర్డ్ అయ్యిందండి. సంథింగ్ ఎప్పుడైతే మనం క్వశ్చనింగ్ పెడితే అది వాళ్ళ బిలీఫ్ సిస్టమ్ కి అది క్వశ్చన్ మార్క్ అండి. అది వాళ్ళ ఐడెంటిటీ క్రైసిస్ ని క్వశ్చన్ మార్క్ అవుతుందని నా అభిప్రాయం అండి.
Definitely, Bhaskar. I think those are really important points. I think, and some of them, I think they're also part of our next agenda item too, which is finding other answers for mysterious questions. So for that item, I'll just say one point and then I'll open it up. I think that's going to be interesting. Agenda item there. So this it's about mysterious questions. Mysterious questions in the sense that these are big questions, like where did we come from? How did all this come about? And then where are we going next? In terms of what are humans? What's the next after we die? What's going to happen? Or after something, what's going to happen? So these are the kind of questions. And I would say one thing about these questions and the attempts to find answers. So of course these are any question is all right. I think there is no point. There is no need to say that there are these questions should not be asked. Of course anyone can ask any question. Now the only point here is to frame the question in a way that will actually point us in some way to understanding what even it's there to understand, to try to answer that question. So I think that's something that is sorely missing in general discourse. Now, so the way to answer mysterious questions is, number one, is to demystify the question first thing. And I think a useful way of doing that is to just confine the question to an area or to a domain. Because we are not living in the time of Socrates, where all questions are answered by philosophers. All right, and we are not living in those times at all. We are now living in a time where we have computers, where we have like lots of areas of expertise, where we have even within the domain of, say, something like physics, right? Superconductivity experts don't talk about cosmology, even if both are under the umbrella of physics. So you see, right? I mean, how much of specialized knowledge that we got into today. So what we have to do, the first thing what we have to do is, for any question that sounds very mysterious, we have to first see which area or which domain is the way to go, first of all, to understand what the question is about. Say, for example, someone asks, where did the universe come from? I mean, they typically ask, where did they ask, who created all this, right? So the way of framing this question properly, rather than who created all this, is to ask, where did the universe come from, right? And there might also mean, where did life come from, right? These two are different questions, but these two are usually the creation questions that a lot of people ask. So where did the universe come from, or where did life come from? Now, where did universe come from? That's a question for cosmologists. That's not a question for Jaggi Vasudev, right? So, and if you ask where did life come from, that's a question for biology. So, as long as we are clear with this, as long as we start, we demarcate. This is called demarcation. So, as long as we identify the proper category in which we can put that question in, that's the first job. I think then we are in the right track. So, if someone asks, what is the meaning of life? Well, they got to turn to something like existential philosophy for that. I mean, because that's where these kind of questions are dealt with. Or if someone asks, what is the right thing to do here? That's a question for moral philosophy. And if someone asks, how can we transform the society in a particular way, in a moral sense, then maybe legal philosophy or jurisprudence, or maybe those are the areas one have to look into to see how this question is even dealt with in the way. Now, when we identify the proper category to which the question belongs to, we see that mostly it's not really answering. It's not going to be the domain of religion or spirituality to answer many of these questions. So I think that's the first thing that we should do, and I think that's where I'm going to stop and then open it up for further inputs and discussion.
సత్ గారు థ్యాంక్ యూ అండి. ఒక్క నిమిషం అండి, మీన్ ఫర్దర్ మనం వెళ్లే ముందు నిన్న అంటే జరిగింది ఏంటంటే బ్లాక్ మ్యాజిక్ మీద డిస్కషన్ వచ్చిందండి. బ్లాక్ మ్యాజిక్ అనేది ఎలా నేను చెప్తుందంటే బ్లాక్ మ్యాజిక్ ఎగ్జిస్ట్ అవ్వదు, నెగిటివ్ ఎనర్జీ ఎగ్జిస్ట్ అవ్వదు అని చెప్తున్నానండి. అది సైన్స్ కందని తను ప్రీ ఎగ్జిస్టింగ్ మైండ్ ఎలా ఉందంటే అండి, అది అసలు మనకు సైన్స్ కందని ఉంది కదా, మనకు సైన్స్ అనేది రీసెంట్ గా డెవలప్ అయింది కదా, ఒక ఫ్యూ 1000 years నుంచి, 500-600 years నుంచి. అంతకు ముందు కూడా ఇలా ఈ బేసిస్ మీద నెగిటివ్ ఎనర్జీ బేస్ మీద చేసుకొని లైఫ్ అనేది కొనసాగిస్తున్నారు కదా. నువ్వు ఎలా చెప్తావు అవి ఆ బ్లాక్ మ్యాజిక్ ఎగ్జిస్ట్ అవ్వవు అని టాపిక్ వచ్చిందండి. జస్ట్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ అండి, ఐ వాంట్ టు సీ హౌ యూ అనలైజ్ దిస్ కైండ్ ఆఫ్.
సో ఆబ్వియస్లీ ఇక్కడ యూ సీ దిస్ రైట్, అంటే వాళ్ళు ఏం చేస్తున్నారు అన్నది, సో దే ఆర్ యూజింగ్ సైన్స్ వర్డ్ ఫ్రమ్ సైన్స్ టు సే దట్ దిస్ ఇస్ బియాండ్ ద స్కోప్ ఆఫ్ సైన్స్, అండ్ దిస్ వర్డ్ ఇస్ ఎనర్జీ హియర్. So what is energy here? Energy is usually associated with work, right? So energy is, broadly speaking, in a classical sense, energy is the capacity to do work. So to do mechanical work, that's what energy means in a classical sense, and that sense applies to pretty much everything in our daily life. So if you take electromagnetic energy, right? That if you say a battery has some energy in it, it can actually do work, right? You can see it, you can run a motor with it. So that you can transform it to do some mechanical work. And if petrol has energy, that's used to transform, do some mechanical work for the car. So any sort of energy usually is associated with capacity to do work. Now, what is this negative energy of black magic is supposed to do? If they can't answer that, then they should say that it's not science. It's magic what they're talking about. That it's not about negative energy. It's voodoo. It's jambalakadi pamba. That's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's how can you say, how can you use science terms to say that it is beyond science when you're making explanations from science to denote that there is something scientific associated with it? When there is a negative energy, it is simple. Can they move something with black magic? That is a question. With black magic alone, with this negative energy, can this negative energy be used to something? Can you detect this energy? Every sort of energy can be detected in some or the other way. Can't you? Every sort of energy, there is a way to detect it. So physical things, anything that is scientific, that you can detect it. You can grab it, you can detect it, you can test it in some way. There is no way to detect negative energy, right?
యా అండి, దేర్ పర్స్పెక్టివ్ ఏంటంటే అండి, అది గనక చేస్తే ఇట్ విల్ ఇంపాక్ట్ పర్సన్ హెల్త్ కానీ ఏదైనా ఇంపాక్ట్ అవుతుందని వాళ్ళ బిలీఫ్ అండి. అది
So mostly if you ask a doctor, the reason why these people's healths are impacted are completely different. For example, if we మనం ఏదైతే చేసామో గతంలో, ఇప్పుడు ఈ సెల్ఫీ విత్ గోస్ట్ ప్రోగ్రామ్స్ కానీ ఏదైతే చేసామో, అక్కడ అన్నిటిలోనూ ఏదో దయ్యం వస్తుంది, ఎవరో ఏదో చేశారు కాబట్టి ఊళ్ళో రోగాలు వస్తున్నాయని చెప్పని అనుకోవడం కానీ, బట్ when you take public health officials, doctors, and you take police along with it, they do identify that it is because of some sort of infection or viral infection or something is going on, and then treatment ఇచ్చినప్పుడు it gets resolved. So that is the explanation for this. So if people give these kind of arguments, what we can tell them is, this is how it has happened. ఎప్పుడు ఏ సందర్భాల్లో అయితే గతంలో ఇదేదో బ్లాక్ మ్యాజిక్ వల్ల ఫలానా చేయడం జరిగిందో, అక్కడ వైద్యం చేస్తే యాక్చువల్ తగ్గిపోయింది. సో అది రోగం, అది ఏదో మ్యాజిక్ కాదు అది. సో
యా అండి, గుడ్ అండి, థ్యాంక్ యూ అండి.
I think this is one approach that we can try, and the other approach is making them catching the tongue on using science words to say things that are obviously not scientific, or if they use these words, then it should stand up to some sort of test. So that is the one, that is one aspect of it. The other aspect is the practical aspect, where if wherever these things have happened, black magic and so-called effects due to black magics were seen, those were mostly we were able to resolve them by giving proper healthcare, rather than doing some counter magical measures, taking some counter magical measures.
Yeah, and good, and I will keep these things. Okay.
All right, I
Maybe I
think we can.
can.
Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
Okay, yeah, I can just come into comment on this. Regarding, I mean, the two aspects. I think one of them, which you already mentioned, which is even if there are mysterious questions, basically the thing is maybe the person who is discussing with you is trying to propose an answer, right? But basically, even in science, there are some elements of what is a good hypothesis, right? So is the person, even for ourselves, right, are we able to come up with a clear, explicit, testable and verifiable statement, right? So basically, even if there is a mysterious question and a mysterious claim, I think asking a person to boil it down, I know this doesn't happen as easily in a conversation, but if you're able to ask the person to boil it down to a clear, explicit statement, and then you would of course then go on to check whether this is a testable statement or not, right? If not, there's nothing to test there. Basically, it doesn't form a hypothesis. So basically, having elements of good hypothesis is one thing that's important. Then the other thing that I see a lot in debates is when a person claims something. For example, when a person claims, "Oh, the genesis of consciousness is not known," okay, although people may in the background ascribe to some answer for that, but if once people make their claim explicit, sometimes we may find that we ourselves do not really debate that specific claim. Sometimes we may be on board with some of these claims that may be mysterious, okay, but basically the things which I personally am not on board is the other connections they make, right? After that, what are the other logical jumps they make? So basically what I wanted to say is sometimes maybe listening to the claims completely, you may find that there is nothing to really debate on that specific aspect of the claim. To maybe you are on board with one specific aspect that people are saying. Yeah, I just wanted to, I don't know if you relate to what I mentioned now. Yeah, but I just wanted to say that.
హరీష్ గారు మీరు చెప్పింది ఏంటంటే బేసిక్ గా ప్రాబ్లం కంటే పర్సన్ అర్థం చేసుకోమని చెప్తున్నారు. సో ఐ మీన్ హీ డజంట్ మేక్ ఎనీ సెన్స్ లాజిక్, దెర్ ఇస్ నో లాజిక్ ఇన్ దట్, ఐ మీన్ నో సెన్స్ ఎట్ ఆల్. That's why you can stop debating with that. I mean, there is no sense. We can't make an argument with that. Okay, right?
Yeah. Maybe that's the. I mean, at least on that specific claim, sometimes there is no debate really. I think. Okay, how do I put this?
I think
Maybe,
that actually brings to
yeah.
next point, Andy. I mean, how do you deal with people
Let's go for
at various levels, right?
Yeah.
In talking about these things, right?
ఒక్క నిమిషం
I
అండి,
think we can continue with that.
ఒక్క నిమిషం అండి. అంటే
Yeah, go ahead.
ఇప్పుడు ఎవరైనా ఒక హైపోథెటికల్ క్వశ్చన్స్ లేకపోతే ఓవర్ స్మార్ట్ క్వశ్చన్స్ అడిగారు అంటే యాజ్ ఏ సైంటిఫిక్ గా ఆన్సర్ ఇవ్వాలనుకునే వాళ్ళు ఎవిడెన్స్ తోని, ప్రూఫ్స్ తోని, లేకపోతే సర్టనిటీతోని, లేకపోతే ఇట్స్ హ్యాపెండ్ అనే అప్రోచ్ లో ఆన్సర్ ఇవ్వాలి. కాబట్టి మనం తడబడతాం, అరే ఎందుకు ఆ ఆన్సర్కి ఇవ్వాలని. వేరే ఇదే క్వశ్చన్ వాడినాడు అడుక్కుంటే ఒకే ఒక ఆన్సర్, సృష్టించాడు అంటాడు. రెండు లైన్లు, ఇది సృష్టించాడు అనే దానికి దేర్ ఇస్ నో మచ్ లాజిక్. ఐ మీన్ వాళ్ళకి అంత దగ్గర థింక్ చేయాల్సిన అవసరం లేదు. సరే నువ్వు చెప్పరా, ఈ సృష్టి ఎవరు నెగిటివ్ ఎనర్జీ ఎందుకు సృష్టించాడు అంటే సృష్టించాడు అంతే. దానికి మనం మీరు ఇందాక చెప్పారు ఒక ఫిజిక్స్ అంటే ఏంటి, అసలు స్టాటిక్ ఎనర్జీ, మ్యాగ్నెటిక్ ఎనర్జీ, లేకపోతే ఎలక్ట్రికల్ ఎనర్జీ, మెకానికల్ ఎనర్జీ, ఇన్ని వర్డ్స్ యూజ్ చేస్తారు. దానికి ఎంతో అండర్స్టాండింగ్ కావాలి. యూ నీడ్ టు గివ్ లాట్ ఆఫ్ ఎవిడెన్స్. లైక్ ఓకే, ఎనర్జీ ఈజ్ నాట్ ఎ నెగిటివ్, వై ఇట్ ఈస్ ఎ పాజిటివ్, why always c square, why is always velocity square, why it is not, why off is coming left side in the derivatives, maths, ఇవన్నీ మైండ్ లోకి వస్తాయి. ఇన్ని చెప్పాల్సి ఉంటుంది మనం ఆన్సర్. దట్స్ వై వీఆర్ లిటిల్ బిట్ హెసిటేట్ టు ఆన్సర్ దట్ ద క్వశ్చన్ హూ ఈస్ ఆస్కింగ్. ఈవెన్ దట్ గై సింపుల్లీ సే దట్ ఇట్ ఈస్ దేర్, ఆర్ లేకపోతే ఈజ్ ఆల్రెడీ క్రియేటెడ్ బై గాడ్, ఇట్స్ రిటన్ ఇన్ మై 2,00,000 years back. ఇప్పుడు ఎవరో ఒక మాట అన్నారు, 100-200 years బ్యాకే కదా సైన్స్ వచ్చింది, 3,000 years బ్యాక్ ఏముంది? 1,000 years బ్యాక్ ఏముంది? మన సైంటిఫిక్ ఎనర్జీ ప్రకారం 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 years బ్యాక్, లేకపోతే millions years బ్యాక్, వీఆర్ ఆల్ నథింగ్. ఏదో గుర్ర త్వరలో ఉన్నాం, ఏదో పచ్చి మాంసం తిన్నాం, ఆ మైండ్ సెట్ తో థింక్ చేయాల. ఇంకా అక్కడ ఏదో సూపర్ గా ఉంది లైఫ్ స్టైల్, దెన్ 1000 years బ్యాకే జస్ట్ సైన్స్ ఇన్వెంట్ అయిందనే మైండ్ సెట్ లో ఉన్నారు. సో ఇక్కడ క్వశ్చన్ ఏంటంటే, ఇన్ కేస్ మనకి ఎప్పుడు సృష్టి పుట్టింది అంటే, యూ కెన్ టెల్ ఇన్ వన్ సింపుల్ వర్డ్, వీ కెన్ గివ్ సమ్ కైండ్ ఆఫ్ సైంటిఫిక్ ఎవిడెన్స్ హౌ వాట్ ఈస్ వాక్యూమ్ అంటే ఏంటి, వాక్యూమ్ నుంచి ఎలా ఫామ్ అయ్యాయి, పార్టికల్స్ ఎలా వచ్చాయి, కొన్ని మిలియన్స్ ఆఫ్ ఇయర్స్ లో ఎలా ఎవల్యూషన్ జరిగాయి. దిస్ ఈస్ సైన్స్ స్టిల్ రీసెర్చింగ్. ఓకే, ఇఫ్ యు ఆర్ గివింగ్ ఏ ఓకే, ఈజ్ ఆల్వేస్ గివింగ్ వన్ ప్రాబ్లమ్ విచ్ ఈస్ నాట్ హ్యావ్ ఎనీ ఆన్సర్స్. బట్ వాట్ అబౌట్ ద క్వశ్చన్స్ ఆల్రెడీ మన ఎన్నో క్వశ్చన్స్ ఆన్సర్ వచ్చింది కదా, దాని గురించి ఏం మాట్లాడరు? అది
అవునండి, దట్ ఈస్ ఇంపార్టెంట్. యా, సో అవును, ఇక్కడ ఏమవుతుందంటే ఒక క్వశ్చన్ కి స్కోప్ అనేది లేకుండా పోవడం. ఇప్పుడు యూజువల్ గా ఒక క్వశ్చన్ అడిగితే కనుక దానిలో బ్రాడ్ గా రెండు మీరు కేటగిరీస్ చేయొచ్చు. ఒకటి మనకి తెలిసిన దాంట్లో, ఆల్రెడీ మనకి తెలిసిన దాంట్లో దీన్ని ఎలా డీల్ చేయొచ్చు అన్నది. రెండు, తెలియని విషయాల గురించి ఎట్లా దాన్ని తీసుకెళ్లొచ్చు అన్నది. సో దీస్ ఆర్ ద టూ ఆస్పెక్ట్స్ దట్ వీ హావ్ టు లుక్ ఫర్ ఇన్ ఎవ్రీ క్వశ్చన్. I think which brings us to how we can deal with this, right? Which is the next item that we are going to talk. And so just a small thing ఏంటంటే, I think we are at time, which is fine. So, but what we are going to do is, we are just going to talk about the next two agenda items, which is the audience, and then finally we'll conclude with the culture of science, and then we can defer the other agenda items to our next meetup, whenever we are going to meet, right? So yeah, I think these were very important points that Vas garu and Harish garu which raised, and then also Godavari garu which who has brought up these things. So how do you deal with audience when we are talking about rational thinking, and broadly who are the audience here, and also what is the utility of rational thinking? I think by this point of time we do understand, I think we have already discussed what is the utility of rational thinking is because you don't want to make effective decisions. You want to think in a way that best fits with the reality, so that you get the maximum benefit out of being a human, living in a society, and looking at the universe, and living in this modern society, in this modern age. So that's the utility broadly. We can delve into further utility also in detail, but I think coming back to the point of audience for rational thinking, and how do we deal with audience? So I'll just say one thing here, and I'll open it up. We should look at audience for rational thinking in the way how we look at audience for a particular type of communication. So from my personal experience in communicating on these matters with like a variety of people in personal life and also outside, and also looking at what the rationalist associations their people do, and all those spokespeople do, the movement, how they communicate, we should categorize into three types of communication, what we do. And it is important to remember what kind of communication we are doing in a particular context, so that we can effectively communicate. So the first level of communication is educational style of communication with general public. So this is where we either give information, or we tell people, say for example about eclipses. I'm just taking one example, very very easy example to understand. So take the issue of eclipses. So you would tell people how eclipses are formed, and what are the usual misconceptions that are associated with them, and also you may also give some commentary around the same thing. So that's one level of education, where the audience is general public, whom you are not going to interact with one-on-one in that communication. So this is the kind of communication which you are going to broadcast in a YouTube channel, or in a TV interview, or in a TV. So whenever someone is giving an interview, right, they are not really speaking with the anchor there, the person who is taking the interview. They're largely speaking to the audience who are actually watching the interview. So they are the audience, and this is the kind of educational style of content that kind of communication that we are doing. That's one level. The other level is a debate style of content. This is the kind of this is an example for this, is talking about eclipses, but in debate with an astrologer or someone like that, who the TV channel interviews, or you're assuming some opponent even if when you are talking in a podcast, or in a on a YouTube platform, you assume an opponent and you respond to that opponent. So that's the kind of debate style of communication that you do. So I think the way how this is done is in a bit different fashion. So you do have some sort of educational content that is presented there, but more focus is on showing why the other argument is bad or silly. And you know, and even here you are not really interacting with one person there. You are largely interacting with a broad set of arguments that this other side puts forward. So you don't need to convince the other person. So even the audience for this communication is not the astrologer, is not the opponent. It's still it's going to be a broadcast. It's still going to be the audience who is listening to this debate. So that's the audience again. That's not an interpersonal dialogue. You see, so these two levels of dialogue are not interpersonal. They are actually broadcast, but these are in a two different fashions. So the first style is an educational content where you just deal with, you know, what the information is and what is the utility of, you know, of this whole explanation, why you should think in this fashion. The second level is addressing the counter arguments, addressing, you know, the bad side, but the bad thinking, and, you know, the misconceptions in a fashion where you would, you know, assume an opponent there, and then you would talk, but you are not really talking to the opponent. You are really talking to the audience. Now, the third level of thinking, third level of you know, communication is actually talking to a person in order to convince them, in order to make them think otherwise. So this is the kind of thinking where many of us actually do in our personal spaces. If we have a friend who believes in all sorts of nonsensical things, power of positive thinking, or, and that's just a lightweight thing. But if they believe, you know, something, you know, something, some ridiculous claims made by people like Jaggi Vasudev, they're like, you know, into that cult. Talking to that person in person is needs to be done in a very different way. So to do that, you got to understand what the person, the values of that person, or the worldview of that person, and you need to know the person to some level. Because your aim there is to convince them to think in a different fashion. So there, I think what Harish Garu said in about, you know, finding a common ground first, finding some points of agreement in which you both agree, both we agree and that person agrees. So once we find that, once we say that, you know, once we establish that, you know, you are not really their opponent per se, but you're only, you know, you do agree with a lot of things, that at least some of them they say, then that actually opens up to an effective interpersonal dialogue. So that's the third level of communication. So the first two levels are broadcast communication, where the first one is you are just giving it to the general audience without an opponent in mind. But whereas in the second level, it's the second type of communication. It's about, you know, assuming an opponent or having an opponent in front of you, but still you're talking to an audience who are going to listen to this debate rather than, you know, trying to convince the opponent. And the third level of communication, third type of communication, is where you are actually talking to a person in order to make them think in a different way. I think a very good example of this type of communication is this guy's, what was his name? Trevor Noah's show. I don't know the name of the show, but you can find it in YouTube. So this guy actually, this is usually seen in political debates, right? Rather than rationalists talking with religious people. So you know, there are many people who try to, you know, who talk in a sense that, you know, they try to find a common ground and then they deal with it. I think who was the other one? John Stewart. He also talks in a similar fashion. Whenever he invites someone to their show, especially Trevor Noah, he starts with, you know, establishing that these are the things that we agree upon, and then these are the things that we can, you know, have a discussion on. So that's the style of communication. I think if we remember these three, and if whenever we are talking with someone about these things, if we try to categorize it appropriately in one of these three, then we would definitely know. So we would definitely at least have a direction in which what to do and what not to do. And in a discussion where your main focus is on you're communicating to an audience who is listening to the debate or looking at the comments in a Facebook group, then your intention, you need not really, you know, optimize your dialogue for changing the heart of the other person or changing the mind of the other person, rather than, you know, giving a counter argument to that in general, so that whoever audience is going to read it, you're not making any assumptions about that, about who is going to read, but you are just communicating it to the general audience as a matter of debate and education. So what do you guys think? I mean, I think this is something that we can also, you know, discuss on, because this is something that we face on everyday basis, right? In our WhatsApp groups and everywhere.
I think that was well put and well characterized into these three specific types, definitely. Yeah. So yeah, then the last thing you mentioned about basically finding a common ground. I think that is in general important, even in a debating format, um, to basically outline what really the topic of the discussion is, right? Maybe just regarding this part about what I mentioned, uh, regarding the fact that sometimes you may agree with some aspects of what the other person is saying. So I'll just elaborate that just one bit, which was that I was having some discussion with a colleague who actually had the idea that Jaggi Vasudev had something to offer in the debate of genesis of consciousness, or how what is consciousness and how consciousness originates. And this person is actually a full professor who's very well read and intelligent and all. And after a little bit of debate, after a little bit of discussion, what I came to know, what I came to understand is that this person's main point of view is that there are many unknown things in consciousness. People haven't yet explained consciousness well. For that, he also came up with several thought arguments and things like that. And actually, the fact is, I also agree with him that consciousness itself is not very well understood, and there is still a lot for science in general to know about about consciousness, right? Or what is the genesis of consciousness. So probably I'm not really arguing with him on the fact that we don't understand consciousness well. So probably, I mean, there wasn't time to continue that, but probably if the debate continued, I think it had to focus more on what do you think that Jaggi Vasudev offers as a solution to consciousness, right? Because that is the point of debate. A point of debate is not that can a machine achieve consciousness or not. That is really not the crux of the debate. So what I wanted to say is, sometimes there is, I mean, if you dig deep enough, there are definitely some common ground, and then the topic of debate might actually be somewhere else, which should become clear before you start to really engage in a debate with a person. Yeah, that's all. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely, indeed. I mean, maybe philosophers of mind have said more well in a deeper way and more logical fashion than what Jaggi Vasudev might have said about consciousness, the matter of consciousness.
Yeah.
Definitely. And there is always this thing, and I mean, I think which is again about finding answers to mysterious questions. So we tend to ask these confused. I mean, we tend to make these wrong calls. I think in the way that film PK talks about. So we ask questions to the wrong set of people. For example, we ask spiritual gurus scientific questions. We ask scientists theological questions, and we ask politicians about history. And we ask historians about political machinations, and this is all we do this all the time. And we ask politicians all sorts of questions. We also, and for example, we ask jurists about economics, and we ask economists about matters of law, jurisprudence, and moral questions. And we don't ask moral questions, moral philosophers anything. So and we ask pundits everything. So we do have the questions, but we ask the wrong set of people. That is the problem.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Vasgar or Godavari or anyone else, do you want to add something before we move to last agenda item about the culture of science?
No, Andy.
No, you can go to the next topic.
Right. So I think we'll move to the last item in today's agenda, which is the culture of science. So this is something that Sai Garu has raised, which is a really important thing, which is part of which is pretty much what we try to do all the time, where we want to motivate others to think rationally and improve their rational thinking, and also to establish a culture of science in the sense that bring up points from heritage, because people do feel a lot. We do feel connected with the heritage that we have, because we try to identify ourselves within a culture, which is not wrong at all, and then we try to use heritage to get inspiration in that sense, so that we can say, oh, even people who are from within our culture group also thought in this way. And also from pop culture. I don't know how many of you watch this, or I don't know how many of you have noticed it, but when Babu Gogineni went to Big Boss, it was kind of, an attempt to make humanism and rationalism and rationality, rational thinking, part of pop culture. Big Boss is viewed by everyone, right, irrespective of their religious affiliation or political affiliation or educational credentials, whatever. It has a huge demographic. The audience has like a huge demographic, right? So it's part of it, to make it mainstream. So that's a cultural thing that uh, critical thinking and rationalists have to do. For example, people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, or what they do in terms of science popularization is that they try to bring these things into mainstream culture and make them part of pop culture, so that a lot of people will also like to be part of it. And from Saha Science for Society, Babu Vagnani Facebook group, we do whatever we try to do. It's in the matter of the process of trying to build a culture of science. Right now, we whatever radio shows that we do, we kind of talk in this fashion in an attractive way. We also do a lot of commentary and really talk in a practical side of things, rather than giving a lecture on something, or talking in a very high intellectual fashion. Many people can't understand or may not be even relevant to a lot of things. So try to give a practical commentary on these things. But I want to find out from each of you, or whoever wants to say, what do you think would help in inspiring to bring a culture of science there? I think we can start with Sai Garu, who put this item in the agenda. So he talked about so Sai Garu, you said things like life stories of people like Socrates or philosophers who really were very prominent figures in the tradition of rational thinking, and who also devoted their lives to this cause. So what do you think would be really helpful in your view to inspire people to think rationally?
Yes, Sarath Garu and everyone. Actually, what I find out in the people who is following the religion, they are learning stories of, let's say, Ram or Balaji or Sai Baba, and they are taking inspirations from them, and they are following them. So that is religion. So, but to popularize this culture of science, we need to put out the personalities, okay, who worked and thought, they are thinkers from ages, and we need to show our heritage as well, so that there will be standing as inspiring personalities, and so that people can follow. As I said before too, there will be followers most of the time, any point of the time, whether past or present or future. So at least follow the right persons rather than the different people, and most of the people who follow the religion, 99% are innocent people. Okay, so they don't know what they are following. So if we educate them properly by telling the stories of these personalities, then that is the thing we can contribute, and make them to follow the right track. Yeah, and especially, and as I point out, the person Vemana, he was born in my neighboring district, and I could not able to know what he said, and until the age of like 25, I missed him completely. So we, like that, we missed the society missed people, and and the government, and as well as some section of lumpen elements in the society try to portray their ideologies by let's take example as Savarkar. Okay, the government is forcibly propagating him, by taking biographies on him, books, and as well as movies, and try to influence this generation, which completely forgotten the works of Gandhi or Nehru or in the before people. So now again we need to revisit those personalities, so that at least we can educate them in the right way. Yeah, that's it.
Definitely, Saigar. I think having role models and icons are really important. Yeah, that is really important. And there is also this, for example, in independent India, at least, right?
Role models, icons, that is also completely, I feel it's not really a typical rationality thinking. taking someone as a role model. See, nobody is 100% is perfect. If you are taking someone as a role model, maybe you are missing your identity, and you might following blindly. Whatever that person you are taking role model, maybe 100% is not truth in all aspects. Maybe few items, yes, is exactly 100% is correct. Scientific thinking or maths alone, science alone, something like that. He maybe personally how treat people others maybe is not good. Maybe the way he's treating elders or youngers is might be not good. Maybe some cases, I'm not saying that all of them. So just take whatever good things from him, as Sai said. Just we can promote his good things, or we should know that what he really delivered, right? So
Right.
instead of say taking someone role model, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
I think what I see is that looking at a role model more in the sense of how this person thought, or made certain decisions, or how they have looked at the society in which they were living, or looked at the world they were living in a certain way. For example, I can give you like two examples there. One, let me give you three examples. I mean, just to be brief. So one example is Jawaharlal Nehru in independent India. So across a very, I mean, it's spread across areas, right? I mean, his the way how he is usually portrayed, as as someone who promoted a lot of scientific temper. I think he coined that word, right? Scientific temper, that Jawaharlal Nehru coined it. So in terms of how he his intellectual foundation, the kind of his intellectual contribution to independent India in the beginning of building a nation, and also to the value of putting education and putting government-led projects, or these kind of things, higher education, and also scientific research, like establishing something like ISRO, or the atomic energy centers and all that. So I think you do have certain kind of legacy. So that I think that's one sort of role model uh, aspect of Jawaharlal Nehru. The other one is, I think I can give a ready example of Feynman, Richard Feynman. So for example, he keeps on a lot of scientists, physicists, even today they keep talking about him. And I think it's about of course Richard Feynman was a very smart guy. He was a very high intelligent person, that there is no question about that. And his autobiography is also many people have read it too. And he continues to be inspirational. If you watch his messenger lectures, was it a message? It's not. I think these were messengers lectures, right? Which Bill Gates has actually put up as free, in which he gave in Caltech, I believe.
Yeah,
No, Cornell
Caltech.
lectures. Caltech or
I think
Cornell? He
Caltech.
worked in Caltech. Caltech, yeah. So I mean, so Feynman continues to be an inspiration in that sense, because in the way how he talked about ideas, talked about things, and how he was able to explain a lot of things in a very simple fashion and yet very effective fashion, and how he treated other people and all that. So other people in the sense that how he would treat his colleagues and all that. There are many people like that. Say for example, I think Frank Drake was his name. He was also very popular for making like top of the a lot of things. So I think, and the other person I want to quote is Ambedkar, where Ambedkar, Dr. Ambedkar, he holds a lot of I mean, he is very highly regarded in Indian society, and if you see is right, I mean, a lot of people who see Ambedkar as a role model, they actually read his works and think in the way how he thought about things. So I think that's one example of how someone can be a role model in a very intellectual fashion to shape their lives. So yeah, I think what Sai Garu said about that, I think is relevant in that sense that you do have a role model that actually helps in building up the culture. But again, I think we have to keep in mind the reservations that Godavari Garu is talking about, where one should not mistake an intellectual role model for emulating or building a devotion towards that person. Yeah.
Right. I want to add one more thing. What Gautama Buddha said. Like Buddha said, he himself said that, okay, don't believe in everything. Even I said something. Okay, just think and analyze, and then follow whatever which you feel, whether it is right or wrong. Yeah. So yes, definitely we can take a role model, but don't follow him 100% blindly. Yeah? That's what.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a I think that's which is attributed to Buddha. That's a really important point. I mean, don't take anyone for granted. Harish Garu, you're on mute, and
So one more thing I want to add, Sharat Garu. See, even in the modern societies, the religious books such as Bhagavad Gita is making a prominence by different way. Okay, so I am requesting you people do a forum, take an hour in Science Hour Society on the things what is quoted under Bhagavad Gita. Maybe there may be few good things as well. I'm not denying, and we are don't put it in a different way. So please, make a question hour on that Bhagavad Gita as well, so that it will be useful. Yeah, in that way. I
definitely,
think
Sai.
you already touched a bits and pieces on those things, Sanatgar. I remember in previous videos, but please try to do a full video on that one if you have a time and everything. Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, just comment on regarding the culture of science. I think I mean I also agree that to have some popular figures. For example, I think Sharath mentioned about normalizing atheism or humanism by going into because that is an important aspect too, right? Not necessarily, if not necessarily as a role model, but to normalize the idea that people can be atheists and rationalists, at least in a place like India, is important. And besides that, having some people that that are role models. Of course, it is a double-edged sword, right? If you have a current personalities as role model, it is a double-edged sword. But still, it helps to for people to aspire towards. And then the other thing is about actually grounding this role modelism or aspirational items in values rather than just cult type personalities is important. But then culture of science actually extends beyond just people into just this fascination for science, right? Whenever there are grants being applied by NASA to the government, they always say, okay, it is basically helping propagate interest in science, right? That is definitely a very big role of scientific research, which is to inspire more people to take up science subjects as the fields of study, which eventually leads to economic and social benefits to the countries, which many countries have seen. So the thing is, like what I think Sharad and others have been doing, Sachan, Vish, others have been doing, which is to actually take subjects and propagate interest in things like astronomy or evolution and such subjects. I think that is very important. It forms quite a core basis of the culture of science. So how to take that forward is definitely through education. And for me, I'm actually a mechanicist. I mean, I study basically soft materials, and I see there are a lot of interesting physics on very day-to-day things. That is how the chapati dough behaves when there is more water, when there is less water. How do these creases form when it dries off, right? There are interesting mechanics behind that. When we look at our hair, some hairs are curly, some people's hair are straight, and how the basically the differential mechanics between two different layers works, that results in have someone having a straight or a curly hair. If you break a spaghetti stick, it breaks into three pieces rather than two. And how can you actually make it break exactly in half? There is a lot of physics that is very clearly explained. These are a lot of natural phenomena, and basically what I want to say is there is lot to propagate in term about culture of science, which is not just out there far in the universe, but some things which are very close to ourselves, which can probably trigger more curiosity and interest in science. Of course, this is probably a criticism also of our school education, which probably is a lot geared towards rote learning rather than experimentational and experiential learning, right? But I think that fundamental education where people can see the beauty of science in front of themselves, that can basically promote the idea that things happen because of a reason, and the reasons are embedded in there and not somewhere out there, right? I think education and fascination for science, curiosity, these are definitely some core values in culture science that we need to try and help to propagate, probably. Yeah, I'll probably I'll stop there now. Thank you.
యా అండి, ఒక్క పాయింట్ నేను యాడ్ చేస్తానండి సరిత గారు. ఇక్కడ యాక్చువల్గా నేను ఇప్పటి నుంచి ఆలోచిస్తున్నానండి. మనం ఇండియా వెళ్ళినప్పుడు కానీ మనము ఒక సెట్ ఆఫ్ ఎక్స్పెరిమెంట్స్ స్కూల్స్లో, మన నియర్ బై స్కూల్స్లో ఒక 1 hour వెళ్ళి డెమో ఇవ్వగలిగితే, ఒక సింపుల్ సైన్స్ ఎక్స్పెరిమెంట్స్ అండి. లైక్ సపోజ్ ఆస్ట్రాలజీలో మనకి సూర్యుడు చుట్టూ భూమి ఎలా తిరుగుతుంది, ఒక డెమో అనమాట. ఒక ఫ్యాబ్రిక్ తీసుకొని స్మాల్ ఐరన్ బాల్స్ తీసేసుకొని వీ కెన్ గివ్ ఎ డెమో అండి. ఇటువంటి ఒక సింపుల్ ఒక 5 to 10 ఎక్స్పెరిమెంట్స్ మనము ఫైనలైజ్ చేసి, అట్లీస్ట్ ఏంటంటే అండి వీడియో అన్న చేయగలగాలి. మనం ఒక వీడియో చేసేసి స్కూల్లో ప్రమోట్ అన్న చేయగలగాలి. లేదా మనం స్కూల్కి వెళ్ళినప్పుడు ఇటువంటివి వాళ్ళకి ఎక్స్పెరిమెంటల్ పాయింట్ ఆఫ్ వ్యూలో మనము ఒక 10 ఎక్స్పెరిమెంట్ 5 ఎక్స్పెరిమెంట్ కనుక 1 hourలో చూపించగలిగితే, దట్ వుడ్ బి లైక్ మేక్ దెమ్ క్యూరియస్ అండి. చిన్నప్పుడు నాకు సైన్స్ పట్ల ఇంట్రెస్ట్, నాకు ఎలా క్యూరియస్ అయిందంటే చిన్నప్పటి నుంచి చెట్లు ఎలా బ్రీత్ చేస్తాయి, మనుషులకు ఎలా బ్రీత్ చేస్తాయి, మానవుడు చెట్లు చంద్రుడి మీదకి ఎందుకు వెళ్ళలేడు, అక్కడ ఏం ప్రాబ్లం ఏంటి, అటువంటి ఎవరో సైన్స్ టీచర్ చెప్పబట్టి యూ బిల్డ్ దట్ క్యూరియాసిటీ.
ఎగ్జాక్ట్ గా ఆ పాయింట్ పెట్టారు కదండి. యాక్చువల్ గా స్కూల్ సిస్టమ్ లో ప్రతి మ్యాథ్స్, ఫిజిక్స్, సైన్స్ లెక్చర్ అదే సైన్స్ టీచర్ గానీ ఇవి చెప్పాల్సిన పని వాళ్ళది. అన్ఫార్చునేట్లీ మనం ఇక్కడి నుంచి ఏదో చేయాలనే ప్రయత్నం చేస్తున్నాం కానీ అన్ఫార్చునేట్లీ అవన్నీ వాళ్ళు చెప్పాలి. అసలు యాక్చువల్గా అదే చెప్పాలి, వాళ్ళకి వచ్చేదే డబ్బులు దానికోసం. కర్మగారు అలా చెప్పకుండా మిగతావన్నీ చెప్తున్నారు. ఇక్కడ ఇది చాలా డిబేట్లో నేను చూశాను. సో ద మెయిన్ ప్రాబ్లమ్ ఈజ్ అవర్ ఎడ్యుకేషన్ సిస్టమ్. యాక్చువల్గా ద వర్స్ట్ కేస్ ఈజ్ ఎడ్యుకేషన్ సిస్టమ్. అసలు day 1 5 years 6 years 10 years ఆ ఏజ్లో పెట్టిన ఈ బ్యాడ్ అన్నీ మన మైండ్లోకి వెళ్తున్నాయి. మెచ్యూరిటీ వచ్చినాక ఇంకా అవే నిజమనే భ్రమలో కంటిన్యూ అయిపోతున్నారు. క్యూరియాసిటీ పెంచాల్సిన ఎడ్యుకేషన్ సిస్టమ్ ఒక రకమైన బిలీఫ్ సిస్టమ్ని ముందు బిల్డ్ చేసి ఆన్ టాప్ ఆఫ్ దట్ దే ఆర్ యాడింగ్ సమ్ సైన్స్. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ నేను చాలాసార్లు ఫేస్బుక్లో పెట్టాను, ఆ ముందు రోజు టీచరు అసలు ప్లానెట్స్ ఏంటి, 9 ఎలా తిరుగుతున్నాయి, సూర్యుడి చుట్టూ ఎలా తిరుగుతున్నాయి, సోలార్ ఎక్లిప్స్ ఎలా ఫామ్ అవుద్ది, అది ఎలా ఫామ్ అవుద్ది అంటాడు. నెక్స్ట్ రోజు చంద్రగ్రహణం సెలవు రావద్దు అంటాడు. అదే టీచర్ నెక్స్ట్ రోజు చంద్రగ్రహణం రావద్దు అంటాడు. ఆడికి అసలు స్కూల్ ఎందుకు, అసలు ఆ టీచర్ జాబ్ ఎందుకు ఇచ్చారు, ఆ ముందు రోజు ఆ క్లాస్ ఏ మైండ్తో చెప్పాడు, ఆ నెక్స్ట్ రోజు ఏ మైండ్తో మళ్ళీ మండే ట్యూస్డే వెళ్ళి మళ్ళీ అదే క్లాస్ని కంటిన్యూ చేస్తున్నాడు. దట్ ఈస్ వేర్ ప్రాబ్లమ్ స్టార్ట్స్. అంటే వాళ్ళ తాలూకు బిలీవింగ్ సిస్టమ్ని అది ఇంట్లో ఉంచుకోవట్లేదు, అది డైరెక్ట్గా స్కూల్లోకి వస్తుంది. స్కూల్లోకి వచ్చినాక అది ఇంక పోదు, ఇంకా మైండ్లో ఇంకా అదంతే. అది ఇంకా ఇప్పుడు మనం ఈ వేరే ఎడ్యుకేషన్ సిస్టంలో ఇప్పుడు ఈ రిలీజియస్ ఆస్పెక్ట్స్ పెట్టనివ్వండి, లేకపోతే వాళ్ళకి నచ్చిన ఐడియాలజీ వాళ్ళ తాలూకా హిస్టరీని పెట్టనివ్వండి, ఇవన్నీ ఏంటంటే జస్ట్ ఒక రకమైన బిలీఫ్ సిస్టమ్ బిల్డ్ చేద్దాం, దానిపైన ఏదైనా చేద్దాం అనే ఒక మైండ్ సెట్ తో ఉన్న పీపుల్ తీసుకొచ్చిన కరికులం. దీనికి గవర్నమెంట్ నుంచి సపోర్ట్ ఉంటే బెటర్ అంటే, మరి అలాంటి గవర్నమెంట్స్ అలాంటి సిస్టమ్స్ మనకి ఉండాలి.
అది వాళ్ళు ఇంటెన్షనల్ గా చేస్తున్నారు అనడానికి లేదులేండి, ఎందుకంటే వాళ్ళు బిలీఫ్ సిస్టమ్ లో వాళ్ళు ఉన్నారు కాబట్టి మిగతా వాళ్ళు కూడా ఆగుతున్నారు లోపలికి. సో దట్ ఈస్ వాట్ ఐఎమ్ థింకింగ్ అండి. బట్ కన్క్లూడింగ్ ఏంటంటే అండి, స్కూల్లో కనుక మనకు ఒక 5 to 10 ఎక్స్పెరిమెంట్స్ కనుక డిజైన్ చేసి ఒక వీడియో ఫార్మేట్ లో కానీ, లేదా మనం వెళ్ళినప్పుడు ఒక టార్చ్ లైట్ తో మన సూర్యగ్రహణం, చంద్రగ్రహణం ఇటువంటి ఎక్స్పెరిమెంట్స్ కనుక డెమో కనుక ఇవ్వగలిగితే దట్ వుడ్ బి గ్రేట్ అండి. ఎందుకంటే చిన్నప్పటి నుంచి వాళ్ళలో ఆ క్యూరియాసిటీ కనుక పెంచగలిగితే చిన్నప్పటి నుంచి సైన్స్ బేస్ మీద, దట్ వుడ్ బి గుడ్ అని నా అభిప్రాయం అండి. థ్యాంక్ యూ.
డెఫినెట్లీ అండి. ఐ థింక్ ఇట్స్ అన్ ఇంపార్టెంట్ థింగ్ ఏంటంటే డెమోస్ అండ్ ఎక్స్పెరిమెంటల్ డెమోస్, ఇందాక హరీష్ గారు కూడా ఎక్స్పెరిమెంటల్ అండ్ ఎక్స్పీరియన్షియల్ లెర్నింగ్ అన్నది కిడ్స్ కూడా ఉండడం చాలా ఇంపార్టెంట్. ఇప్పుడు నాకు తెలిసి ఈ ఫారం లో ఉన్న వాళ్ళు కానీ ఎవరన్నా కానీ వాళ్ళ మీద టీచర్ల ప్రభావం చాలా ఎక్కువ ఉండి ఉంటుంది at some point of time in their lives, and that is because they pick their curiosity and then gave them a proper direction in quenching that.
ఒక్క నిమిషం అండి, అది చిన్నప్పుడే కనుక మనం ఆ ఇంప్రింట్ కనుక వేయగలిగితే అది సిగ్నిఫికెంట్ ఇంపాక్ట్ ఉంటుందని నా అభిప్రాయం అండి. అది
అవునండి, అంటే వలకపోసుకుని ఎత్తుకోవడం అవ్వదు. అంటే ఇట్స్ నాట్ లైక్ ఒక ఏజ్ వరకు ఒకలా ఆలోచించి తర్వాత సడన్ గా జ్ఞానోదయం అయ్యి అలా ఉండకుండా ఒక ప్రాపర్ ఫ్యాషన్ లో వెళ్తుంది. అండ్ మోర్ ఓవర్ దట్స్ హౌ ఈవెన్ సొసైటీస్ అవుట్ సైడ్ ఇండియా ఆర్ ఆల్సో డన్. ఇప్పుడు వెస్ట్ లో కానీ ఇక్కడ కానీ, అంటే ఈవెన్ దో ఇప్పుడు ఇఫ్ యూ ఆస్క్ randomly some person whether they really know why eclipses form, they may not answer, but they may not really think that you need to fast during an eclipse. So there are these cultural things also which are at place, and at some level there is some sort of cultural activism or cultural change that we also need to bring, so that the baseline is not superstitious. So that is the problem here. So for many of us, I think even till a generation ago, the baseline for getting married is not really horoscope matching. The baseline used to be different, and off late in the last 20-25 years, because a lot of astrologers are coming to the market, now the baseline to do anything is consulting some pandit. That has become like that, and that's a cultural thing. It's not like people have become dumber or people have become more intelligent or anything like that. I don't think so. I mean, it's pretty much at the same level, but there is this cultural baseline that has shifted, and there is also that we have to take into consideration somewhere. So I think before we close, I think Sumant garu, Chandra garu, Vamshi garu, whoever is on the forum, right? Anyone else? Do you want to add something? So Sumant garu, you suggested an agenda item, right? And we kind of discussed two of them. But finding answers for mysterious questions, also audience for rational thinking in one sense. So
yeah, definitely, Andy. So there are a couple of things that I thought through during the discussion. Andy. One, you made a really good point about rationality is making the best possible or the best possible decision according to the circumstances that we have. There is one more thing that I wanted to add to that, Andy. That's so most people from the circle that I see, they don't really care about the consequences, Andy. So that's really something that that needs to be taken into account, well in advance. Like best possible decision also implies taking or understanding that minimizing the worst possible scenarios, but telling it explicitly, like, hey, if you're doing something, there are consequences to it and you should be ready to face them, rather than blame it on some magical person after this is done and take the same step again, or make a different decision because of something has changed, or you're definitely there is uncertainty in it, but there is also to some extent we can quantify what could go wrong, or how to what extent it could go wrong.
Definitely, and someone who believes in Jaggi was this nonsense, they'll be his customers, right? Buying
exactly
Rudraksha for like $5,000 or $6,000. All sorts of silly things, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. If they really like to throw $6,000 in somewhere, then it's up to them, right? I mean, at least to that extent. But many people don't want to most people don't want to be deceived or make a fool out of themselves, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And many people don't like lies. They don't want to be lied at. I mean, people get angry, right? If someone try lying to someone in your family and see how mad they'll become. You can't even lie to kids; they'll also become mad, right? So
yeah, definitely.
At some level, they are being dishonest in the sense that people might say we don't care if we believe in lies, but that's not really the case. They do believe in
Mhm.
things that they think are true or at least valid to some extent. And if they say that, then it's at a psychological level that we have to deal with it. If you want to,
Right.
convince the other person that you should not be believing lies.
Yeah, definitely. And the other point I wanted to add was like, we were discussing about pop culture, right? And the way, most, like the most influential thing in like India right now is like a movie, and like movies and like TV series and live TV and apart from the social media that like social media or like Instagram or TikToks, like cinema and TV and like journals, like the amount of people that talk about like rationalism or like um, or their identities or like their belief systems, it's not really normalized, Andy. So it's like we see like so many movie stars who are okay, like even if they don't believe in like let's say a movie star goes to temple, it's not that big of an issue. But if he denies going to temple because he believes in something else, that's not normalized. And um there is something like the society implies a threat to them, or like I was seeing some video and like I came across this like some vlogger here rejected a photo of a god that was given him, whatever that is, but it attracted a lot of criticism, which is like let him have his own beliefs, like it's not something that you need to take on. And like the broader point I'm trying to bring is like the people who make these decisions, like I was reading in some like I was looking at some interview where Prabhas was asked if you believe in astrology and stuff like that. He said, like, he simply stated, no, I don't believe. But he made a 500 crore movie. Like, there were so many promotions going on. There is so much crap that happened around a lot. But the fact that the like his take, like the protagonist's personal take on that is something like a different perspective, right? So that is not brought to light, or like it's not normal in mainstream media to observe these things, like
And the person who asked him that question, he
Mhm.
apparently the person probably likely failed to ask. Then why did you act in this film? Did you not know what this film was about?
Exactly.
Yeah,
No,
and
no, I
of
don't,
course, I mean,
Shivanand.
if it's really money, I mean, it really pays well, to act in these kind of films, then that something like that should be pointed out and asked them. Is this
Correct,
worth
correct,
it?
correct.
Yeah,
Yes,
go
yes.
ahead.
No, no, no. That I'm completely opposing that. See, if he is not believing that particular topic or particular system, he is not promoting. He is promoting his movie. He is not promoting that astrology or whatever scrap.
Mm-hmm.
Question number one. You might ask that, okay, before movie release itself, you could have told that, okay, I am not believing the astrology, but I am making movie just for making money. Can anybody say like that? వై
Yeah.
అతను చేసేదే కమర్షియల్ గా సినిమా 10 రూపాయలు పెడితే 20 రూపాయలు పెట్టడానికి. అది అబద్ధం. ఇప్పుడు రామ్ గోపాల్ వర్మ దెయ్యం ఉంది అని చెప్తాడు. దెయ్యంతో కావాలంటే నేను రొమాన్స్ చేస్తానంటాడు ఒక యాంగిల్లో. ఇక్కడ ఏంటంటే అందరికి ఆ గట్స్ ఉండవు. అంటే ఒక నిర్మాత 100 కోట్లు పెట్టినప్పుడు ఒక చిన్న స్టేట్మెంట్ తోనే చాలా మనీ వేస్ట్ అవుద్ది, చిన్న స్టేట్మెంట్ తో. అలాంటిది ఒక సినిమానే వాళ్ళ తీసినప్పుడు దాని మీద ఇది మేము నమ్మట్లేదు, పిచ్చోళ్ళు చేసి మేము చేస్తున్నాం అనే కంటెక్స్ట్ లో వాళ్ళు చేస్తే ఎవడు సినిమా చూడు. అది కమర్షియల్ గా యాక్ట్ లో చూడాలి.
అదేనండి. లైక్
మన శరత్ ఏమన్నారంటే మరి ఎందుకు ఆ మూవీ చేశారు, మీరు నమ్మనప్పుడు ఆ మూవీ ఎందుకు చేశారు అనే క్వశ్చన్ అడగొచ్చు కదా అంటున్నారు కదా.
సో ఇప్పుడు అది కూడా ఇంకొక లైక్ డిఫరెంట్ కైండ్ ఆఫ్ డిస్కషన్ అండి. ఇప్పుడు సపోజ్ మన గ్రూప్ మెంబరే ఉన్నారు, కమల్ కృష్ణ గారు. సో హీ ప్లేడ్ అ రోల్ ఇన్ రీసెంట్ పాపులర్ ఫిల్మ్ విరూపాక్ష. సో నాకు
Kamal Kamaraju.
కమల్ కామరాజ్ గారు, సారీ అండి. సో కమల్ కామరాజ్ గారు, హీ ప్లేడ్ అ రోల్ ఇన్ దాట్ మూవీ, రైట్? అండ్ to the audience outside this group, like we know that he's a rationalist and he doesn't believe in that, like spiritually, like awakening, that or bringing life into people or something like that. Like that's complete trash for like people on the inside of the movie. But then like, you know, people on the other side, they might like, who don't know that, you know, Kamal Garu is a rationalist, he's an atheist, like who don't know his take on this, might, you know, there is a chance, like if you don't advertise it particularly, or if there is a chance, like, you know, that might go in a different direction, or like, you know, he's not the main role, and like there
See,
were not many
A.N.R.
interviews.
Garu was an atheist and Akine Nageswara Garu.
Exactly,
Look at all the
exactly.
devotional films he did. Bhakta Tukaram
Yeah,
and a lot of his most successful films were Bhakti films.
exactly.
But the
And he
difference is this.
advertised that only.
Yeah, what I think is, I think a supporting actor acting in a film is different from the star of a film who is
Right.
responsible when whose film is marketed based on the marketability of the star, right? There's a difference, I
Right,
think,
right.
in these two. I'm not saying Prabhas or anyone should not act in any kind of films. What if Prabhas acts in some Marvel film? Does it mean that does it mean all people who are starring in Marvel films are are believe in supernatural things? No, it's not like that. But the point is, the topic of palmistry or astrology or divination is a serious issue in India. That's one thing. The other thing is,
Yeah.
of course, he can act in a film that promotes palmistry. But if you ask the person that question, and maybe you'll get an interesting answer, and that answer might be
Exactly.
interesting, that may be useful to society. Maybe that will actually give the audience who watch these films as some sort of endorsement to these kind of ideas, as how the stars themselves look at this. Then they may
Yeah.
get clarity on this, right? I mean, for example, I'll tell you what, Adipurush, right? A lot of Hindus, right? They did not really like Adipurush, and they actually felt bad that that makers have actually took advantage of their belief in in promoting such a crap film. So they know, right? It was done for commercial purposes. So when you say that to a believer or to someone that this was done for commercial sake, and if the star of the film themselves said something like that, that would give them clarity, right? In the way how they should look at the film, and not
Exactly, Andy.
think in a fashion that even the star does not think about in that fashion about the film. So I think
Exactly.
that would be an interesting question to ask.
Yeah, true, Andy. And good that you brought up A.N.R. Garu. He did so many devotional movies, but when asked about it, he said he's a staunch atheist.
Yeah.
Right? He's a non-believer. He did like the best of devotional films. Like I'm not sure if Annamaya. I'm sorry, I don't know that to that extent. But whatever devotional films he did, like when asked about it, he was an atheist all along. Like Kamal Garu. He did so many he did so many devotional roles, or like whatever he's doing, but outright he tells that like he's a non-believer. The same could have gone with Prabhas also, Andy. Like no matter like what 500 crore movie is, it's about a story, but then like his personal beliefs are his. He like the 500 crore marketing budgetability is not deciding anything, Andy, because like Prabhas knew he was a like, maybe this is a personal take, but he answered in the interview that he did not believe in something like that, right? That question could have been avoided or edited out by the marketing team, but they did not, because they wanted to bring in that perspective as well.
Yeah, I don't think particularly. I think the makers of the film were outright irresponsible. At least they were not as irresponsible as the makers of Adipurush. At least, but yeah, I think it's important. I mean, whenever whenever a very popular person talks about these things in the sense that that they do have a critical view of things, or they are skeptical about certain things as superstitions that are taken for granted in the society. I think it would be very interesting to ask them a bit further on how they think that people think all these things. I don't think it's going to be controversial. It's going to be educational.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to put out a lot of perspective. And my thing is like I wanted to add to it, and it's not just Indian media, right? In the US also, like if there are like hundreds of movies being made, academy picking up movies like for the awards and stuff, I have seen very low number of movies that promote or talk about rationality or religion, or like like as mainstream as like the what do you say, the other side of the media shows in, right? So like maybe I'm not putting it in the right words, but then there is no explicit promotion or understanding, like if there are issues, these guys are like, they take their personal sides, and like, Sarath Garu was mentioned Trevor Noah. Like Trevor Noah is a person that I really like, and Jimmy Kimmel, like John Oliver. If there is an issue, they do take a stand personally too, right? That's how they get their audience. But I don't see that happening in Indian media too. Like, if there is something that's going on, and if that person personally has to take a stance, they're not that outright in doing that, or like, they're trying to like, please everyone, or something like that, or be indifferent, which is also a good thing. I don't know, but just the perspective that I'm seeing in.
శరత్ గారు ఒక క్వశ్చన్ అండి, నేను ఇక్కడ ఒక క్వశ్చన్ అడగదు, ఇప్పుడు ఎప్పటి నుంచి అడగదలుచుకున్నాను ఈ క్వశ్చన్. అంటే మనము యాజ్ ఎ రేషనలిస్ట్ గాను ఎథిస్ట్ గాను, ఐ మీన్ ప్రతి రిలీజియస్ పర్సన్ చేసే యాక్ట్ ని కండెమ్ చేయాల్సిన అవసరం ఉందంటారా? ఎందుకంటే యాజ్ పర్ కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ వాళ్ళ రిలీజియస్ నమ్మటానికి వాళ్ళకి పర్టికులర్ రైట్ ఉందండి, యాజ్ ఎ ఇండియన్ కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ ప్రకారము. మనము నా పాయింట్ ఏంటంటే, ఎప్పుడైతే హ్యూమన్ రైట్స్ అనేవి పర్టికులర్ గా వైలేట్ అవుతున్నాయో వీ షుడ్ స్పీక్ ఆన్ ఇట్ అని నా పర్టికులర్ అభిప్రాయం అండి. కొద్దిగా సెలబ్రిటీస్కి వచ్చేసరికి మనం కొద్దిగా అగ్రెసివ్ గా రెస్పాండ్ అవ్వాలన్నది ఐ గాట్ ఇట్ అండి. ఎందుకంటే అది సొసైటీలో ప్రమోట్ చేయడానికి ఛాన్సెస్ అవకాశం ఉంది కాబట్టి వీ షుడ్ గో అగైన్స్ట్ అండి. అంటే మీ టేక్ ఏందండి, మనం ఎంతవరకు అగ్రెసివ్నెస్ లో ఎక్కడుంటే బెటర్ అంటారు?
There are two things andi. Okate entante, the first thing is intervening whenever there is harm happening. So, and there are like two kinds of things. One is whenever whenever there is a culture of frenzy that is being propagated in the name of bad ideas, including religion or superstition, cultural superstition, especially in terms like eclipses. One might say, believing in Rahu Ketu type of eclipse is their religious right. That is very well the case. But the thing is creating a culture of frenzy, saying that you should not be eating, or pregnant women should not be moving around. That kind of frenzy needs to be dealt with. There is a need for intervention there, and it's one of the fundamental duties. And the other aspect is what you mentioned, where there is an issue of human rights. So if someone because all these things are eventually they lead to human right violations, but not all kinds of harm the same. Some needs an immediate intervention. Some need an intervention by authorities, by police or by doctors. And whenever we do campaigns, right, from Science for Society or SAHA or Indian Humanists, we keep these things in mind whenever we think that this is the matter of intervention. So there are these two aspects in which we have to intervene. There is no other way. The other thing is about the cultural aspect. So as you said, of course there is a right for religious people to hold their beliefs, and there is also free speech in the country. And free speech is actually about propagating critical thinking. It's not really about propagating superstitious thinking. If you look at the historical reasons why free speech, any country wanted to support free speech, you could see that it is because people who think critically, people who question things, they were being prosecuted by the state, or meted with violence. So that was the reason why there is a right of free speech in many countries. So as long as we understand that, then we do understand that the public dialogue of criticism and counter criticism and dialogue, that is a very natural process of any modern society. And what we should be clear about these things is that anyone has the freedom to express their opinions. That's true. Anyone has the freedom to hold their religious beliefs, and anyone has the freedom to criticize them, as long as it's not being violent. That's the thing about it. And I think establishing a culture of science involves questioning these things. I mean, even though they may not even these are different from the matters of intervention that I talked about before. So I think bringing critical thinking and skeptical thinking into mainstream culture is important in that way. And it is not unconstitutional in any way. That is actually one of the duties.
Yeah, and got the point. And thank you.
Right, I think we are at 4:00 now. We had a 2-hour discussion. The first 15 minutes, I think, where we just scrambled to get people together and everything. So yeah, I think thank you everyone for joining, and I hope we all had a wonderful discussion on these things. And we are going to keep meeting, often. depending on our schedules and everything, so that we can keep discussing these things and also other things, and then make our movement stronger and collaborate in a more effective way, and also get to know each other, so that we can be part of this umbrella called the Saha Science for Society, and have engaging discussions in our Telegram group and outside as well.
Okay, Andy, thank you.
Thank you everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
nice Sunday.
It was pleasure talking to you all. Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.